I'm really happy to be here with you, Linda. I hope everybody knows Linda Ravenswood's work already, and if you don't, this is a good introduction. Linda's a fantastic LA presence and has been living and working in LA for, I don't want to say years because that tips into the unknown there, but a very long time, and is a major impact mover and shaker in LA that I am very proud to know. And I met Linda through her editing and inviting me to become part of a wonderful anthology that she did, XLA or 10LA, where she curated poets that represent the scene here. So thank you for that.
I'm sitting with Allison Adelle Hedge Coke. Oh my gosh, what can we say about you? Professor, talk about a mover and shaker. Your feet just touch the ground and then you're off tomorrow to Georgia to then hop around to all the universities, right? Everyone knows you. You judge every single poetry prize. You teach us all, edit anthologies, are in anthologies, have a new book out. Look at this blue. And I heard it was up for something, wasn't it, just recently?
Yes, it is currently up for National Book Awards. You too. You were just declared one of the winners.
It was totally a declaration, Allison.
It was a declaration, Oxford Poetry Prize. Do you think we could open up with you reading that?
Absolutely, I'd be so honored. It was selected by Emily Berry.
Amazing.
She's a sort of a cultural critic and poet herself, pretty well known in the UK.
Yeah.
So this is taken from, you'll probably know it, from Bridget Pegeen Kelly's song, which just keeps inspiring me year after year. So this is elementary school. There was a goat's head hanging by ropes in a tree, she said. You have to forgive men. I immediately wanted to say for how long, but I knew she'd say it's a process and a cycle, that we have to thank them for wheels and the trips to CVS and the houses, that it's a balancing act for everything, everywhere, that marriage is about, in the end, coming to an agreement, that you both need each other, especially as you get on in life. 3 husbands, 4 husbands, lots of sons. The song of the nightbird, she said. They say it's something men are, like it's what boys do. Something comes over them. Maybe it's a little bit biology, maybe it's a little bit dark anatomy. They just don't know why they did it. They were in a group of them and it was like a cloud. They all saw red or black or some color. It's built into society to forgive them, to punish them hard and then forgive them, to punish them hard and never forgive them. It's built in. You have to say sorry and you have to mean it. Cried like a man and struggled hard, she said. Even a woman recognizes the struggles of a man, even a woman talking about murderous intent of children, who happen to be young men in the making. Even there, a sweet song of forgiveness shocks the night with its beauty and tenderness, the sweetness of I'm sorry. Everybody cries for a man, the man you lost, the man you never knew. And would you be surprised to know your own father had a dungeon? Not a metaphorical dungeon, but a dungeon where he did things that men do, things he needs to be forgiven for, things he will be forgiven for, songs he'll sing to be forgiven for, the way his song goes on forever when his song is a cry for forgiveness for the things men do.
Beautiful, moving.
Thank you. So that's after Bridget Pegeen Kelly, the great poet who has left us.
I think she'd love it.
I hope so. I constantly go back to that poem through the years. I don't know, we have so many fantastic poets, but she just keeps pulling me all the time.
Yeah. You want to talk about that a bit, about influences?
Well, of course, Shakespeare and Sylvia Plath and Gloria Anzaldúa and you, especially you, for I'd say maybe the last 20 years.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Talking about, being a Native woman and what that's been like, through California, through the Midwest, on the East Coast, in academia and with your kids. And I can't wait to hear more about that. But I first want to ask you, where were you born?
Yeah.
And how did you get to be such a great poet? Has it always been turning inside of you?
I feel very humbled by that phrasing. Thank you for saying that and feeling that way. Thank you. I was actually born outside of Amarillo, Texas. My parents were there working, and they actually met and married in San Diego. So I could have been born here, but they followed the work as people do. They were working in the hospital I was born in at Northwest Texas Hospital. My dad was doing help with polio patients, so was my mom. He was doing it part-time and had a job with Department of Agriculture. He grew up working in the field, same as I did. And my mom was doing physiotherapy, as it was called in those days. That's how they met. Back then, the field was not a doctorate. They did very quick training for people to work on the polio epidemic. So it was a beginning field, so they were both involved in that. So I was born there. We moved while I was small back to a ancestral homeland in North Carolina, where we have roots both affiliated, related to Cherokee, Irish, Scot on those sides of the family. And so we stayed in North Carolina off and on again from the time I was, a small kid up until I was nearly 30 before I completely left North Carolina. I go back seasonally. I was also partially raised in Alberta because my mom is from there, and so we spent months of every year there. We had relatives in Oklahoma, in Kansas, in Colorado, in the Dakotas, and I was fostered out a lot as a kid. So I also had time in those places. The Kansas was unrelated, actually. I just got fostered there. My mother had schizophrenia. And so, which I think my father's way of dashing around her madness lent us to be artistic, creative, improvisational, as need no basis culture in the house. So when something had to happen, you would learn how to do it very quickly. And all of that sort of comes into the sway of poetry, or the poetry head. And it's just something that's there that you walk around with, and when you allow yourself the grace of writing, you move into that, as as a poet, you move into that space. The new book is really an unfolding. I wrote it over a weekend. And so without years of doing it, I don't know if you could, I don't know if I'd imagine that happening earlier, but I was compelled by the work that became the book, and it was driving me more than I was driving it. And so I think maybe the moving around, the dashing in and out of my mother's madness and my father's gentle way of being in the world were great impressions. We're also we also have Portuguese heritage, French-Canadian heritage, Lorraine, France heritage. There's some English I mentioned earlier in there, and Scot and Irish. So we're really mixed. And I think that also is something that causes one to have different things to draw from at different times,
As my students say.
Yes, it's exactly like that, so it's all of that. How about for you? What drew you to poetry?
Like you, those multiplicities of heritages and cultures, and the Jews from Europe coming in and filling the house with their cholent and their recipes, and the hot fruit compote and Yiddish. So just, sort of like Clarissa Pinkola Estes, that kind of like cool Mexican tradition, and then Native American, English, Scots Irish, full Irish, Northern Irish, Southern Irish, and then that big influx of Jews escaping the Second World War and the Holocaust. So that just, infused me with, that majestic, mysterious history. And I was also sort of an outsider all the time to all of these cultures. So that was really estranging, but also, like a little, an only child. That's the other weird part. So trying to find a little way in, like a little vine, like finding a little bit of light and then creeping in. And Yeah, so I was really nourished by all the multiplicities of cultures here in Los Angeles.
I love that, the little creeping in the vine, and it reminds me of so many things in LA. You know, you look at the concrete, and after a while, a vine creeps through. You know, there's life there, and you can only temper it down for a while. It's going to come out. But I also was thinking of how many of those lineages have been through trauma, and how your work intersects, you know, a lot with loss, with love, with also witnessing things that have happened over time, you know, so it's there with you.
I really felt that way, like I was witnessing, and because of my DNA or my soul, whatever that is, I just could hear the stories, even if they weren't telling a story, and then I was able to like say it back out in a way that, I don't know, could move them to remember or to experience what they had told in a way that made them feel like maybe something they'd forgotten. So that sort of, I wouldn't call it a power, but that sort of magical moment of saying, I've heard you, this is what it meant to me. Is this what you said? And then looking up at them and seeing, you know, eyes full of tears, that just made me think, oh, well, this is a sacred, incredible thing, this kind of witnessing. And so it just propelled me on to constantly be saying those stories. And I just, now I do it almost as a business with the typewriter poetry that we do. I just did it for 2 weekends in October at the Getty. And this German lady just started crying after just, you know, my hearing her for a minute, then sort of typing out what I thought she might have needed. And now I have another friend for life, it seems.
That's beautiful.
So there's just this magical connection that happens when you can share a story.
You seem like a healer to me, so I feel like, you know, a lot of your work
Well,
is
I feel
healing.
just sitting here with you, I just feel the healing
happening. Thank you.
And I'm so grateful. There is a particular poem of yours that really heals me, and I know that if you could be moved to read it today, I know it will heal.
Which
more.
one? Is it in the new book?
It is.
Okay, let me pull that up.
It's on page 25.
Okay, so Look at This Blue is an assemblage poem, so it's written as a piece. It's like jazz improvisation, but orchestration, so there are solos, there are places that are riffs, there is a refrain that comes back and has variations in it. There's a prelude, a coda, but it's like a jazz orchestration. And this is page 25. We need balance, need keep what may kill us all, what may end us. Distinguish an atom, a gathered molecule, something we must, in each and every touch in this life, in every single moment of solitude, and in silence, in the coming and going of River and her embodiment of so many other beings. She nurtures us to replenish us with the life givers, the fish she bears and birds who seek her for snails and protection, as we seek River for healing to rekindle us in our own winterings. Now is the time to return to what we do with our partnerships in life. The cranes impressing us for generation upon generation, giving us dances and life and reason, an approach to enjoy the reason we were gifted, these particular atoms. Thank you for asking me to read that. Would you mind doing an exchange with me and reading one?
Sure.
If you don't have a preference.
I don't.
If you don't, I wanted you to read this one, this one that I read with you and was able to honor your book, but I want to hear it in your voice. Of course. Is it okay?
Sure. Okay. Was this when we were in San Francisco?
This is when we were at Beyond Baroque for your book launch.
Oh, for the launch, that's right.
Yes, and you asked many of us if we wanted to join you, and we selected poems to read.
Great. So this is the Stand Poems 96 Days Gone, and the Stand Poems is a collection that I wrote sort of minute by minute to get through the death of my partner. And yeah.
We're both widows.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost Bill in 1989, you know, so yeah, it's that. I get it.
Yeah.
Thank you for this.
Thank you so much, Allison. So this is the Stand Poems 96 Days Gone. And we had a real partnership. It wasn't all like roses. I mean, I would hit him in the head with a coffee tin if I could. I was so upset with him sometimes, or, wash his windows or whatever he wanted, other days. So this is, I wouldn't speak to you and now you're dead. Now you're dead, we'll never speak again. Saxon says it feels like self-inflicted animal scratches down his face. Long-drawn fingers raiding down his cheeks, his hands into rakes, carving out the planet of his head. He tells the story of how he found you. Sonny, tell me? I can't comprehend. It's too much for him, but he tells me over and over, always the same at the end with you dead. He turned up the YouTube so loud on you, dropped pencils and instruction booklets, rained down his hands on you, turned you over, your face snapping back to death. He would not stop holding you. He was afraid, but he touched you in your lonely death in midwinter. It was a cold February. Our backs froze at night. We laughed and said, pneumonia was on the house. Every one of us shivering. The snows dipped down in Malibu. Everyone talked about the cold. You could see it on the mountaintops above Los Angeles. I'd forgotten about all that weather because you died and nothing, not even reckless snow, seemed possible.
It's an absolutely gorgeous piece. It's so moving to me, and I just love it. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much.
Such a great book, and you've got 2 others out since, and another collaborative piece out since.
I don't know how that happened. I just was working like a squirrel for decades, and then all of a sudden the books appeared like a garden or something.
I'm going to pull up this beautiful galley, which I have not had the opportunity to see before. And I'm so excited about this. I was looking on Barnes & Noble, and it was like, it's coming out in November. I pre-ordered, and then I went to Amazon, and it's like, it's coming out in January. Would you like to pick a selection from this to gift us with?
Golly, sure.
I would love that so much. Thank you.
Of course. Oh, I
there's
wondered where
money.
that...
That's for my pay for pitching a book. Thank you.
Bus lady. I knew a lady in North Hollywood. Used to live behind the metro station in a car her brother left. It had Minnesota plates. The whole thing was a rundown. After she lost it, she ran a scam at Greyhound on account of getting rolled too many times, sleeping rough. Every night, from wherever she was, she'd take a city bus to Greyhound and fall asleep in a swivel chair. She'd have her suitcase at her feet and one of those voucher sleeves gripped in her fist. Anyone walking by would think she was on her way with her neat hat and her lime green cardigan. But there was nothing in that voucher jacket, just an empty pamphlet. In the morning, she'd shuffle to the ladies' room, freshen up, and be on her way. By the time she was back around to that station, it had been a couple of weeks. She said people thought she was traveling just fine. If someone asked, Vegas or Reno was always the guess, and right there she'd make up a story about nephews around California, how every few weeks they called for her, and how her grandbabies kept her on the move. People thought she was well loved, just waiting for her bus to be announced. After sleeping in her swivel chair, she'd pad around town, go to JCPenney's, have coffee in the Flute at Farmer's Market, ride the RTD. In the back of the bar that summer we met, I'd seen her all over Venice, and she said there were 2 things she thought about nearing 70. She missed the old market, sitting out among the stalls with a big porcelain cup of coffee. She said wisdom was hot coffee. She missed being young enough to crisscross the country on her bus, and she opened a pocketbook showing an unblemished handkerchief that covered her whole face in flowers when she wiped her chin. She was Los Angeles.
It's a gorgeous piece.
Thanks. Could you possibly read one more, Allison?
Oh, yeah.
Because page 47 and 48 are calling.
Okay. Vinlomond spineflower, Monterey spineflower, Scotts Valley spineflower, robust spineflower, Sonoma spineflower, ashland thistle, fountain thistle, churro creek bog thistle, Swiss sun thistle, surf thistle, la graciosa thistle, presidio clarkia, Vine Hill clarkia, Merced clarkia, Pismo clarkia, Springville clarkia, Mount Diablo bird's beak, Seaside bird's beak, Pennell's bird's beak, Wiggins croton, bristlecone, crepantha, July gold, red rock, tar plant, Liverpool tar plant, Ote tar plant, Gaviota tar plant, Sant Susanna tar plant, Mojave tar plant, Baker's larkspur, Cuamanca larkspur, golden larkspur, San Clemente Island larkspur, Mount Laguna aster, Vandenberg monkey flower, beech spectacle pod, slenderhorn spineflower, Kamaka Lake Downinga, Santa Clara Valley Dudleya, shortleaf Dudleya, Agoura Hills Dudleya, Santa Monica Dudleya, Santa Cruz Island Dudleya, Caneo Dudleya, Laguna Beach Dudleya, Santa Barbara Island Dudleya, Varieties Dudleya, Ash Meadows Daisy, Currim Malo, Big Bear Valley Sandwort, Santa Ana River Woolly Star, Hoover's Woolly Star, FDR Gray No Note, Tracy's Aristum, Parish's Daisy, Indian Knob Mountain Balm, Lompoc, Yerba Santa, some say Herba Santa, Trinity Buckwheat, Loam Buckwheat, Irish Hill Buckwheat, Butterworth Buckwheat, Caneo Buckwheat, Santa Barbara Island Buckwheat, St. Nicholas Island Buckwheat, Kellogg's Buckwheat, Southern Mountain Buckwheat, Cushionberry Buckwheat, Thorns Buckwheat, Twisselman's Buckwheat, Condon's Woolly Sunflower, San Mateo Woolly Sunflower, San Diego Button Celery, Loch Lomond Button Celery, Delta Button Celery, Contra Costa Wallflower, Menzies Wallflower, Santa Cruz Wallflower, Hoover Spurge, and it goes on and on from there. Pine Hill flannel bush, Mexican flannel bush.
So, Allison, is it possible that you could talk a little bit about the shirt you're wearing today
from
Deep Medicine Circle?
It's a land back project spearheaded by a physician in University of California, San Francisco Hospital, and in the School of Medicine, Rupa Maria, and she is a brilliant genius. Oh my God, her and Raj Patel wrote this wonderful book called Inflamed, and it's about everything that's wrong with our medical system and what's happening to make us sick. It deals with colonial aspects, everything, you name it. I met her because she wanted a poem to open a chapter in it. So she took my poem, Pando Pando. So thank you. So Deep Medicine Circle is a group of people, indigenous and allies, who are working for land back in the Bay Area and healing and taking space, buying the space, conserving the space, getting rid of invasive species, bringing back, letting native plants come back, especially medicinal and food plants, whatever needs to be there to restore it, to create organic gardens so that they can also be cultivated as they always were, and return beavers to the water streams, bring back elk. And I just got back week before last, my granddaughter Hazel and I went up, and I teach narrative medicine in our School of Medicine. So I went up to do my part in service in offering deeper aspects of story to the participants in Deep Medicine Circle. A farmer participated who's working there and growing, and a lot of the student fellows who are there as interns participated, as well as a local elder who was there. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. We'll definitely look it up.
In the back of Look at This Blue, there's a whole resource list, and it's listed. We can all take a part in doing something better. You know, we can all do something. Otherwise, we're complicit, right? So there's that. And you and I have traces in LA going back to when it wasn't so populated. We remember a time where there was lesser people, but the air was thicker and you couldn't see the mountains for the pollution. Right? So we've seen these things, these changes, and I hope we're moving for change today. I think your work is asking for that and bringing us to that, so thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming down from Riverside, but also coming from Hawaii and from all the places where you dwell.
Thank you.
To bring light and change
thank
and
you.
poetry, and to remind us about the songs and the stories and how they can help us to heal. Thank you, Allison Adelle Hedge Coke.
Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Linda Ravenswood.